Have you ever wondered why the market always goes against you? Many times after you've bought a share, then share prices started to drop. Is it because that the market doesn't like you? How do we overcome this situation then? M+ Wiz, which alerts on potential entry for trending stocks, might do the trick for you. Is that all for the Wiz feature? Not at all. To find out more, please visit us at mplusonline.com/wiz.
Hello everyone, good evening once again to all the audiences here today. So firstly, as usual, if you guys can hear me, please type yes in the comment section below. So if you can hear me, please type yes, and don't forget to help us to like and share this video so that more of your friends or family they can learn about what is this company we're talking about today. So do type yes in the comment section so that we can make sure that the audio is all well before we begin. So, welcome to tonight's session, corporate briefing session. We'll be looking at healthcare REITs, which you might have heard of, our AQAR. So, what makes this REIT special is that it mainly concentrates on healthcare real estate. And so, if you'd like to learn more about our AQAR, stay with us for the whole presentation. And we also have a Q&A at the end. So, do leave your questions in the comment section below. So, who will be better? None other than the Executive Director and CEO, Encik Wan Zaman bin Ismail, to bring us through the briefing on our AQAR. Hi, Encik Wan. Good to have you on the show. Hope you're doing well there.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for inviting us to join this M4 online.
Yes, no problem. Glad to have you here as well. And also tonight we have Louis from our Head of Research to bring the burning questions to the table, as we have a Q&A session at the end. So as I mentioned just now, do leave your questions in the comment section below. So I don't delay it anymore. J1, the floor is yours.
Okay, shall we start the presentation? Okay, next slide. Next slide. A brief overview of what we are. AQAR is we are pure healthcare REIT. We only invest in assets that are within the healthcare area. Our assets are 23 assets. 22 is in Malaysia and 1 is in Australia, Brisbane. Out of the 22 Malaysian assets, 70 are hospitals, 2 are colleges, and 3 wellness centers. These are all operated by KBJ. In terms of statistics itself, our anchor tenant is obviously KPJ. We recorded 115 million in last year, with a dividend distribution of about 5.2%, with about 6.81 cent per unit. This has been somewhat depressed due to the COVID-19 last year, but unfortunately, we have not been severely affected by COVID. So our hospitals are on the right hand side. The 17 hospital I said, the weighted average lease expiry is about 4 years. Similarly with colleges as well. But the aged care in Brisbane has about 90 more years to go because we have a 99-year lease with them. Okay. In terms of contribution, the bulk of the income is coming from hospitals, but close to 80%. The other percentage are all contributed by the colleges and the aged care. Okay, next slide. In terms of our income, is actually underpinned by master lease agreement with KPJ. This means that we totally lease on a wholesale basis. What they do is that they pay us as one amount lump sum. In return, they are allowed to actually continuing to operate the hospital. Is on a single net lease, meaning that the KPJ will have to pay for the maintenance on it, but the other so-called factors of leases is the insurance and as well as the statutory payment are paid by us. So that's why we call it a single net lease. The ones that are considered as triple net lease are the ones that are paid. All three of them are paid by the lessee itself. The leases are long term, 15 years and plus 15. If you look at the right hand side, we have 6 hospitals that was supposed to expire in 2021. We had renewed the leases for another 15 years. So thank God we've got a quite attractive rate considering the level of borrowing cost that we have now. The other leases that are coming 2023, 2024, we believe that these assets are located in strategic locations, and therefore we believe that KPJ would be mindful to actually renew the leases, because otherwise they will not have access to the operations of the lease itself. Okay, next. In terms of our Australian asset, the leases are slightly different in the sense that we have a triple net lease. The rates are quite high, so we are in fact looking into reducing the rates because the market for Australian is about 6.5. So we are looking into that because we needed to support them. But in terms of the long-term outlook of Australia as well, we have somewhat a double whammy. One is that the Australian aged care itself is under a microscope because of the Royal Commission that's been set up by the Australian Parliamentary. They have in fact set up the commission to investigate the so-called elder abuse in certain aged care facility. Fortunately, that doesn't have anything to do with us. There were no incidences of abuse, but the recommendations that was by the commission itself would have an impact in terms of the overall industry. It may increase our OPEX, and it may also have an impact in terms of the attractiveness of aged care industry, because those that are staying in aged care facilities are subsidized by the government. So the government plays a major role in terms of the aged care industry. So the other thing that's affecting the future of aged care is COVID-19, because COVID-19 affects the older folks. In fact, last year, 2020, the majority of the death, 75% of the death in Australia from COVID-19 occurred at aged care facility. Although none had died at our place from COVID, but the impact in terms of overall is that people are very very reticent or very would rather wait and see position before committing themselves into going into aged care, simply because of the numbers in terms of the COVID-19. So because of this so-called potential headwinds relating to aged care facility, we have actually been looking at the future of the facility itself, whether or not we should exit or not. But we have not made a decision yet, but we are still reviewing the case, and we will come up with a proper plan to actually resolve the future of Australia in the next few months. Okay, next. In terms of rental support, rental rebate, fortunately, we have not been affected that much. MCO1, yes, the hospital were affected because at that point in time, it was still new, the COVID-19. Everybody was afraid. I think nobody wanted to go hospital because they thought hospitals was the main place where the virus would be plentiful. And in fact, the doctors themselves, they had in fact postponed non-essential surgeries. So this has affected our the performance of our partner, mainly KPJ, in terms of their what we call bed occupancy rate, meaning the level of occupancy of their beds. This is a good indicator in terms of the financial health of our hospital. So what we did was that we in fact gave a rental rebate, but based on the actual performance, to enable us to normalize the occupancy cost. Occupancy cost means that we take the 2019 rental payment, rental amount, we divide it over the revenue, meaning that that's a percentage of the what we call occupancy cost. So for 2020, we normalized that by using 2019 as a base point, and then reducing the rental so that the occupancy cost would be normalized to 2019 numbers. But again, it wasn't 100% because we had kept to a maximum a certain amount in MCO1. And further down the line, we also reduced the capping so that the amount isn't that great. For this year, we believe that looking at the numbers in terms of MCO2 and MCO3, it's looks like the rental rebates, even though will still be there, but it won't be as safe or as before. We expect this quite to be minimal, and it will be mainly on those that are directly affected by it, especially the colleges, because of the closure of the MCO part. So we believe that for 2021, the impact of the rental rebate won't be as great as last year. For example, last year we had reduced the profit by 10% simply because of the effect of the rental rebate. This year we don't expect that to happen again. Okay, next. So in terms of the pipeline, these are the so-called identified KPJ hospital, KPJ assets that we are looking into acquire. Starting from 2006, we started with 6, and right now we are, like I said, we are at 23 hospitals. We are looking into adding further to this. In the next, we have already identified a number of hospitals that we can add in the next 5 years. Okay, next. So 3 major areas that we're looking at. One is we want to diversify away, not just acquiring KPJ hospitals, but we are also negotiating with several local hospital and ACC operators to actually do a sale and lease back. So we are looking into diversifying away, not just purely relying on KPJ alone. And we also diversify away from hospitals as well. We want to add other assets that are within the healthcare sector. For example, ACC. ACC is an ambulatory care center. It actually sits in the middle between clinics and hospital because it provides a higher level service, but it doesn't have the overnight beds. So you can still have a day surgery that to be done. So normally the cost or operational cost is much lower, and the approval process from MOH in terms of setting up ACCs are also very simple. So these are the major growth areas we're looking at. So the other growth area we're looking at is also senior living care, the aged care facility, because we are all getting older. By 2040, about 16% of us will be more than 60 years old. So primarily because of the cultural issues, we don't have a real big aged care industry compared to Australia, for example. But we believe that the demand will grow simply because of the volume. And also there were a number of queries that came from the parents themselves looking to plan their retirement so that they can actually put themselves in aged care retirement villages rather than relying on their children for their care in their old age. So other assets we're looking at is pharmacy, labs, FMBs. FMBs are, we're talking to one party, which is distribution of FMB to hospitals. So they're interested in expanding their operations. So we are working together with them. The other diversification is actually the country itself. But obviously this is going to be long term. It's not going to be in the next 1 or 2 years. The countries that we are interested in, countries that, especially in ASEAN region, if we talk about Vietnam, even Indonesia, for example, we believe that their growth are commendable looking at their GDP growth in the past 5 years. So we believe this, especially Vietnam, is quite an interesting country for us to expand. They have quite a robust national health insurance scheme as well. So I think this is one area that should be attractive to us because it reduces the risk in terms of. Next. In terms of the financial performance, these are the numbers. So I won't go too much detail on them to say that we've been quite stable in the past few years. The growth has not been as steep as we liked, simply because of the inability for us to acquire the KPJ hospital because of the in tax reserving, the ITA. Because the moment that we acquire the hospitals from KPJ, the ITAs are cancelled. So there's a lag of 5 years. So this is nearly the end of the 5 years. So the acquisition cycle should restart again. We've seen it last year. We should be able to see it this year and next year as well. Okay, next. same thing with total asset. Total borrowings, we have a policy to keep within about 40%, simply because for us to have a too high of a gearing ratio would mean that we don't have enough headroom to do acquisitions, especially those that are 100% cash, because the SC has stipulated a maximum limit of 50%. But on the other hand, we don't want to be too low. For example, we don't want our gearing to be 20%, for example, because it's rugi lah, because the current low interest rate regime means that the higher our borrowings ratio will be, the cheaper our cost will be, and therefore the more in terms of dividends that we can pay out. So there's a balancing act between not too high of a gearing and not too low of a gearing, because of the two factors as I said before. Okay. So in summary, these are the 5 factors that we're looking at. One is that we are a defensive healthcare REIT, meaning that if we look at the COVID-19 pandemic, the industries that have not been affected by COVID-19 pandemic are industrial and healthcare. So we are looking at the COVID-19 not as a one-off event. There'll be other diseases that come, and even COVID-19, people are talking about it being endemic rather than pandemic one, meaning that COVID-19 will always be around. It's only a matter of us having to learn to live with COVID-19. So having a healthcare REIT is actually a good defensive against all these future pandemics. The second factor is that we have a healthy pipeline in terms of providing the long-term growth. With the support of KPJ, we are adding all the number of hospitals over the next 5 years, but we're also looking into a third party to actually increase that as well. So we want to grow faster than before. Okay. The third factor is that we are benefiting from the low interest rate regime. We did refinance 575 million in May this year. We have actually reduced and substantially there. We're talking about this year alone, starting from May onwards, we are going to reduce our borrowing cost by 6.5 million, which actually goes back to the profitability of the company. And this is 2021. In 2022, because of the full year, we're looking at around 10 million of cost reductions in it. So this is a bonus for us in terms of getting the numbers up, numbers of AQAR up. Consistent DP payout is number 4. We have been quite consistent in paying DPU, but it is our intention to actually grow this further rather than being static at 7.7. We want to grow it further. And the 5th is actually the Sharia compliant. We are only the 4 Sharia compliant MREIT in Malaysia. So therefore, not only in terms of Sharia compliant, but it also meets the ESG as well in terms of it. So that's all that I have in terms of I hand it over back to Lau.
Hi. Okay. Thanks, Jasmine, for the insightful session. Okay. So we definitely learned something new today. I definitely learned something, and we have some questions prepared actually. And if anyone from the audiences have any questions, please drop it in the comment section below. So now I'll welcome Louis, our head of research, to ask the right questions to J1. Thanks.
Hi, Joanne. Good evening. Thank you for joining us in this briefing. I would like, as a REIT company, right? Just now I came across the word WALE, right? I am pretty sure that a lot of people would like to understand how does it derive, and I think retailers would maybe can get a feel of if this number is higher or lower is better. Maybe you can explain briefly on WALE to the retailers. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. WLE refers to the weighted average in terms of the lease expiry years. In a sense, whether the higher the better, it depends on the REIT itself. For example, if you have a REIT which is somewhat in a stable industry, it's better for you to have a long-term, a higher WLE, in a sense that it ensures that your assets are continually being somewhat rented or leased to a one party that has the ability to actually pay the rental over the long-term years. But for example, if you are a retail and you believe that your ability to actually extract more and more value in the years to come because of your repositioning, for example, your mall, you have changed the way the look of the mall, you have upgraded and all that. For you to have a very, very long WALE for your tenants may not be a good idea, because in a sense you are restricting your ability to actually increase your yield from the asset themselves. So again, I would say is a little bit here and there, whether it's positive or negative.
Yep, I think like you say, it is always a balancing act between long term and shorter term. But because we don't have a very good comparison in Malaysia, we only have AQAR. So your 12 point something WALE, is that considered above average if you compare to various countries, like maybe in Singapore or even Hong Kong? Are you able to give us a light on this?
If based on what the numbers that we've seen in Singapore, the numbers are similar to us. For example, our leases normally runs 15 plus 15 years. So this is what normally the corresponding our REITs in Singapore as well. But again, it depends on the asset itself. For example, if you're doing a aged care facility, it might be slightly different in the sense that you may want to have a shorter period to actually take into account the ability for you to actually increase your yield on those assets.
Okay. Okay. So just now you mentioned that in AQAR you have around 23 assets of hospitals and also colleges and things like that. But I understand that KBJ has more than 23 hospitals, right? Are you thinking, acquire? I mean, to have all this KBJ to inject under your portfolio as well in the future?
Yes, obviously, it's in our interest. They're 100% of their assets in us, because it's the higher we have value in terms of asset, the higher profitability. But unfortunately, REIT also works on yield. There are certain assets of KPJ which are still in the early stage. They are not ready yet to have the yield, so therefore they are not able to be injected to us because of the question of the yield. And the other delay was also because of ITA as well, because there are instances where the government has granted ITA to the hospital, but they are unable to deposit to us because it meant that the ITA will be cancelled as well.
Okay, so if there are, I mean, in the future, how many of them
Sure answer, the KPJ, we're looking to slowly over the years taking over most of their hospitals once they have reached the maturity and the required yield. Yeah.
So are you looking to inject any of those in the next coming, let's say, 2 to 3 years?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay.
I
So
can't give you numbers, but you
yeah, of course.
just wait for the next few months. There'll be news
Okay,
coming out.
sure. Okay, sure. So during this COVID pandemic year, is it very tough? I mean, just now I've seen that the earnings are dropping. Then right now we are recovering. Where do you foresee yourself in the upcoming few quarters? Will it continue to grow higher from this point? And what is your guidance to us?
In terms of drop in 2020, it can be traced directly to the rental rebate. It's purely that. Kalau base without the rental rebate itself, we would have recorded a higher rental as well as revenue as well as profit. So similarly with this year, with the reduced amount of rental rebate, we would be expecting an improved performance from 2020.
Also, since that we are on this topic of earnings, right? You have also done some revaluation loss in fourth quarter due to this Australia asset, right? So if we are able to take out this revaluation, because revaluation is just a number games, right? It's just accounting matter. So what is the core earnings in FY20?
Sorry, if we talk about the I just still have to emphasize that we talk about revaluation. This has an impact in terms of the P&L. The only thing is considered as unrealized, and therefore doesn't have an impact in terms of the dividends payable as well, because dividends payable are based on the realized profit. But we believe in revising the value, because looking at the future of aged care in Australia, there's question marks. So we needed to be ready with get ready the asset themselves, so that in the event in the future we are ready with it, rather than last minute having to revalue the properties. In terms of the future, with the growth of the hospitals and as well as other operations, we believe that the contribution from Australia will somewhat be minimized, and even if we have, for example, any disposals of the Australian, we'll match it in such a way that any exit of the Australian assets would have to be compensated by the entry of new assets to replace the lost income.
Okay, since that is the case, right? Would you rather dispose of that asset?
Again, it depends on the prices lah. If they give me a silly money now, I'll say yes lah.
Yes, of course.
But we have to look at it overall. But the good thing about Australia now is that the market in Australia is now consolidation of aged care facilities, because the Australian government has actually stopped issuing new licenses. So anybody that wants to expand their aged care operations would need to acquire the existing operator, meaning the licenses themselves. So in a sense, there is demand for existing. Yeah. So again, if somebody gives me silly money, I'll take. But if the offers are not good enough, again, something that we have to balance out.
Yeah, I suppose everything has a price tag. So if the money is good, I think you should consider taking it as well.
Yeah.
So I also understand that because just like you mentioned, your gearing is at 41%, and you have down certain you have refinance your interest as well, right? So in that sense, how much would it contribute to the dividends? Because last year dividend was around 6%, right?
6.8.
6.8 cents. Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah.
So how much would it contribute to the next year's or FY21's DPS?
The for this year, for next year, for example, is for full year, the borrowing cost will be reduced by 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 million divided over what our paid up capital is 785. So that gives you the so-called increase. Yeah, increase in the revenue earnings as well.
Okay, so roughly it will go back to around maybe 7 and also 2019 figures lah, roughly about that.
Should be.
Okay. Great. So that would translate to a very, very interesting yield play for REITs counter. I believe that not many in Malaysia has this kind of decent yield, especially when retail malls are suffering, and also not many of these office REITs are performing. I think healthcare is one of the so-called best REITs in Malaysia. So I guess if retailers you are interested into getting just yield, pure Uplay and pure healthcare REIT, I think AQAR would serve as one of your good portfolio management kind of portfolio exposure. To be honest, yeah. Okay. So I think there is a few more questions. I just want to ask about this because since that you are just now you mentioned about acquiring the KBJ, some of the assets moving forward. So how are you going to acquire them? Is it by fundraising or is it by more debt, or how does it contribute to this portfolio?
We'll structure in such a way that we'll probably borrow about 40% of it, and the other 60% we'll have to come up with either issuance of units to KPJ or the third party, or as well a combination of private placement as well. So that we'll raise the money and then give cash to the vendor. But we'll limit our borrowings to around 40% so that we have room for us to maneuver.
Okay, so still a bit of debt, a bit of private placement and things like that. So in terms of private placement, I mean, if you are going to do a private placement, who are the specific investors? Are they investors such as under the institutional side, or is it under the private wealth investors, or how do you look for these investors?
If our investors mostly institutional investors, but there is somewhat of negative side to it, because the institutional investors, because we're giving them quite a good yield, they're not going to do any selling. They just buy and keep the units. So therefore, when we talk about our volume, it's going to be very small. In fact, we would like to have a higher in terms of turnover,
liquidity?
in terms of liquidity. Yeah. So we would like to actually focus on the retailers as well, rather than purely. Of course, it's easier for me to talk to investors in terms of institutional, because one of them can cover 40 to 50 million, but long term wise, having too many institutional investors can create havoc to your liquidity ratios numbers.
Yep. Totally understand. It is always a balancing act in this liquidity as well. I have just one last question. Just how you mentioned a very interesting point under your slides. There is this ACC. So maybe you can enlighten the retailers out there to talk about this ACC. What is it? How does it different from a hospital?
Okay. The problem that we're facing with hospital is that in order for you to have hospital, you must have the requisite volume in terms of the population demographics, in terms of the ability, their pay and all that. So therefore, there's always a limit in terms of the hospitals. And also the other problem that we have with hospitals is that the amount of time for us to get approvals from MOH, because MOH normally controls the private hospital to make sure that there are not too many hospitals within the vicinity lah. Because of that, we believe that the so-called the longer that we goes, the hospital will become at some point in time, in a sense, become saturated. We're not talking about now lah, but we're talking about maybe you talk about 10, 15 years from now, we're going to end up with that. Whereas if we compare with ACC, again, ACC is also because it provides primary care. This has been the so-called strength in overseas, especially the US and EU, where because of the cost of, especially in the US, because of the cost of healthcare, people are looking into primary care to actually reduce the cost of hospitalization. And therefore, what they do is when they have ambulatory care center, which can provide certain day surgeries and all that, which doesn't mean that you need to stay overnight and all that, which increases your cost. This actually means that one is that the ACC itself can provide a much cheaper cheaper services to ni, and also because of the way that they are structured, they can actually be cited even in shop houses and all that, rather than whereas hospitals, the MOH doesn't allow hospitals to be in shop houses anymore. So in terms of the capex and the opex of ACC is much lower, and therefore the good thing for us is that the volume is there, and also the ACC would also act as a funnel. Any problems that you have, obviously if KPJ, for example, controls the ACC, they will be able to make sure that the follow-up to the hospital will obviously go to the next, the nearest KPJ hospital, to ensure that these people don't go outside of the KPJ circle. So again, these are the so-called advantages of ACC.
So I guess in layman term, ACC would be serving as a short trip to the hospital, and not to overnight kind of style, and that would also help in terms of the cost for the patients, and also it will also build under the ecosystem inside the KPJ as well, right? So that is the whole exciting part of this. If you have ACC, then you have KPJ full-fledged hospital, so you can combine each other together.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay, I guess that would be some of the questions I have. Let me check whether is there any questions from the audiences? Don, do you pick up any questions from audiences?
No, there wasn't any. So if there's anyone that does have a question, please do put them down there. But someone did comment that healthcare is interesting. It's a safe haven for institutional investors.
Yeah. Especially the sicker that the country goes, the better for the industry.
Yeah. Just like you mentioned that our demographic of our population in the next how many years? 15% will be above 60, is it?
Yeah, 2040 is I think the time that we will be defined as an aging population. So by that time, I already be defined as old already lah.
so people should make more kids.
Yeah. But it's simply because of our healthcare services. Because we are not to say what our healthcare sector is probably one of the most fully serviced in terms of their and in terms of the cost, we are cheapest, especially compared to US and all that. So that's the reason why most of us are getting older and older.
I remember since last year, a lot of people were talking about this medical tourism to Malaysia. Malaysia considered to be one of the best medical tourism spot for a lot of these tourists, like from India, from Indonesia. I think it's wonderful that Malaysia can always provide this kind of special needs, for tourists. I guess KBJ is also one of them to provide this medical tourism, right?
Yes, there are certain hospitals that have been earmarked for tourism, especially one in Johor and in Ampang as well. The one in Johor are especially catering for the Singapore, the Indonesian as well.
But under this scenario of COVID, do you still? I mean, is KBJ still able to accept all this medical tourism?
They don't. So it has an impact in terms of it, but fortunately, it's only for a certain limited number of hospitals, and their numbers have not been as extensive as before. But to us, whatever COVID-19 or that, but healthcare tourism is still a sector that we as a country as a whole needs to cater for. I mean, not just Indonesia, but Vietnam also. When we went there, they have a very healthy respect for our ability to offer healthcare services, and they see us, although not the same level of Singapore, but near enough to there, but with a much cheaper cost.
So I guess just one last question. When are you going to expand to Vietnam again? Is there any timeline?
Again, this is something that we are continuing because obviously COVID-19 has really disrupted a lot of our plans in terms of, but it's not something that we are saying no, because to me Vietnam is very interesting to us.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess that would be all the questions that I have. Yeah, pass back to you, Don.
Okay, thanks so much to you for helping out.
Thank you, Mr. Wan.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and hope everyone in the audience has a fruitful session today. So I'd like to thank J1 for your time here today, and your team as well, to provide us a deep insight on our AQAR, and also to Turing Alpha for organizing this session with us. And last but not least, also to thank all the audiences that has joined us today, and hope you guys are well, and stay safe and have a good evening. Thank you.
Okay, stay safe, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you guys.
Bye.